There's something that walked out of the woods that night, and I still don't know if it ever went back. This happened a few years ago, up in the Cascades. Deep in the Oregon backroads where the trees grow so tight around the road, your headlights can't see more than a few feet ahead. I've been driving long haul since the early 2000s, and I've dealt with my fair share of close calls. Bad weather, worn-out brakes, animals darting out of nowhere. But this was different. I was hauling a load of rough-cut timber from a private mill to a fuel stop about 80 miles west, near the edge of the Willamette National Forest. Nothing fancy, just another overnight route to keep the deadlines tight. But I'll tell you right now, I've never taken that job again, not after what came out of the tree line when the world went quiet. I left the mill just before sundown. The sky was turning that kind of dull orange that doesn't last, the kind you barely catch in your side mirror before it fades into nothing. The truck was heavy, the roads narrow and patchy, and my only goal was to hit the fuel station before 10. It was the only one open past dark in that stretch, just a single pump, a rusted-out shack, and a guy who ran it off a loud, sputtering generator. That road out there, Highway 242, it's the kind of place where the trees lean in like they're listening. You get about 20 miles of gravel, then a winding descent through pine-covered slopes, no cell signal, and barely a soul for hours. I had the CB on, but no one was talking, just static now and then, and the hum of my engine chewing through the climb. By the time I pulled in at the station, I was the only one around, except for another rig parked just off to the side. No driver. Looked like it had been sitting there a while. Hood popped open, probably waiting on a tow that wasn't coming anytime soon. I fueled up, signed some paperwork, then went back to the truck and lit my little portable stove. Some canned beans, stale bread, it was routine. And routines for guys like me are what keep us sane out there. But something about that night, it felt thinner somehow, like the air wasn't sitting right in my lungs. I was sitting on the step of the cab, picking at my food, when I heard it. At first, I thought it was the wind shifting through the trees, but it had rhythm, a kind of rise and fall that didn't match the breeze. Then it got clearer, sharper. It sounded like crying, high-pitched, desperate, like a child calling out for help. I stood up and scanned the tree line with my flashlight, but the beam only cut through about 10 feet of brush before it dissolved into black. There was nothing, no movement, no rustling, just the sound, and then it stopped. Just like that. No echo, no fade out. Like someone had hit mute on the whole forest. The silence that followed was worse than the crying. It felt like the trees themselves were waiting. I tried to shake it off, told myself it was a bird or some kind of animal, but I didn't believe it. I tossed what was left of my dinner, shut the stove, and started packing up when I heard the next sound. Steps. Heavy ones. Not boots, not hooves. Something flat and wide, crunching through the underbrush like it didn't care how much noise it made. I felt it before I even saw anything. The way the air changed. Thicker, colder. It was coming closer. I didn't think. I dropped flat and slid under the truck, wedging myself between the front tires and the transmission. My flashlight was off, and all I could hear was my own breathing. Shallow, sharp, trying not to echo off the gravel. Then it stepped out of the woods. I only saw its legs, thick, too long, covered in patchy black hair that looked matted and wet in places. Parts of the skin underneath were raw, peeled, like it had been burned or maybe never healed right. It didn't move like a bear. Didn't sound like one either. It was too controlled, too aware of where I was. It walked straight to my little cooking setup, sniffed at the air, and I swear to God the stench hit me like rotting meat left out in the sun. It knocked over the pan, nosed the stove, and that's when I heard the hiss of leaking gas. The flame went out, but the smell kept spreading. Then came the sound I can't forget, a growl, low and vibrating, like it wasn't coming from a throat, but from the space around me. Like the whole night exhaled at once, it circled the truck. I could feel the weight of each step through the frame, and then it stopped, right next to me. I thought that was it. But before anything happened, the crying came back, farther this time, deeper in the woods. The thing hesitated, turned, and vanished into the trees like it had never been there. I didn't sleep. I just lay there, under the truck, waiting for the sun to rise. Every crack of a twig, every gust of wind sounded like it was coming back, but nothing else moved. Not until the sky turned gray and the birds finally started up again. I crawled out, hands shaking, packed up what was left of my gear, and got behind the wheel. I didn't bother checking in with the station, just started driving. Figured if I kept moving, I'd outrun whatever the hell that was. About a mile down the road, something made me glance at the side mirror. That's when I saw him. A man, shirtless, barefoot, walking out of the woods like he'd been dragged through hell. His skin was torn up in patches, like it had been scraped raw, and in his arms was a child, limp, face pressed against his chest. He wasn't walking right. His legs moved like they didn't belong to him, like his body was remembering how to work itself. I kept driving. Haven't taken that route since. Don't plan to. If I hadn't stopped for her, I would have died that night. No doubt in my mind. This happened a couple years back, somewhere on a dead straight stretch of I-45 in central Texas. Middle of the night. No towns for miles, just open blacktop and heat still rising off the asphalt. I was hauling a light load out to Houston, figured I'd knock out the overnight leg to beat traffic and make good time. I'd done it before. No big deal, but this time, something was waiting out there. Something I still can't explain. I left around 11 p.m. from a warehouse near Corsicana. The air was heavy, that sticky, late summer kind of night where the bugs slap your windshield like rain. I had a thermos of coffee, the CB dialed in, and an old country station playing just low enough to keep my brain moving. The plan was simple: drive straight through, grab a few hours at a truck stop west of Houston, and unload first thing in the morning. I'd done worse runs on less sleep. The road was dead. No taillights, no oncoming beams, not even a raccoon in the ditch, just the hum of my tires slicing through the dark, mile after mile, the world shrinking down to whatever fit inside my headlights. Around 2:20 a.m. I noticed the CB had gone quiet. Not even static, just a low, dead silence like the channel had been cut. I fiddled with the dial. Nothing. Not a click, not a pop. That's when I first started feeling it, that itch between your shoulders, like something behind you was watching but too far back to see. I told myself it was just the fatigue, but I sat up a little straighter, took another sip of coffee, kept scanning the sides of the road. That's when the voice came through. It was barely a whisper, just enough to cut through the quiet and make my hand freeze on the wheel. "Stop here!" The voice came from the CB. No call sign, no background noise, just those two words, and then nothing. I looked around. Nothing in the mirrors, nothing in front of me. But something in the way that voice sounded, like it didn't come from anywhere, just appeared. I eased off the gas just a bit. Maybe I was hallucinating. Maybe I needed a break. Then I saw her. Up ahead on the shoulder, just barely in the reach of my high beams. A woman. Walking slow. Like her body didn't want to keep going. Her clothes were white, loose-fitting, stained with dirt and dust. Her arms hung limp at her sides and her head was down, like her chin was stitched to her chest. I pulled over without thinking, climbed down, boots hitting the gravel. I called out, "Ma'am, are you okay?" She stopped walking, didn't turn, didn't move, just stood there, swaying slightly. I took a few steps closer. Her feet were bare, covered in dried blood, cracked from the heat. Looked like she'd been walking for hours, maybe days. And then she looked up. Her face was pale, not sickly, just wrong, like it hadn't seen light in years. But it was her eyes that stopped me cold. There weren't any. No whites, no pupils, just two dark, endless pits where they should have been, like someone had painted over the sockets with tar. She didn't blink, didn't breathe, just stared straight through me. And I swear, I felt it, like my thoughts weren't safe anymore. I backed up a step, tried to speak, but nothing came out. That's when she raised her arm, slow and deliberate, and pointed down the road. Her voice came out dry and soft, like wind through dead leaves. "Don't keep going," she said. "They're waiting." Then she dropped her arm and turned away. No sound, no movement from her dress, like even the air around her had gone still. I stood there for maybe 10 seconds before my body remembered how to move. I climbed back into the truck, slammed the door, and floored it. No music, no CB. Just the road and the sound of my tires clawing at the asphalt. I didn't look in the mirrors. About 15 minutes later, the curve hit me. Sharp bend, no warning. And there it was. A semi, jackknifed across both lanes. Still fresh. Flashers dead. No emergency crew. Just steel and silence. If I hadn't slowed down, hadn't pulled over for her, I would have plowed straight into it. I sat on the shoulder for a long time, engine idling, hands locked on the wheel. My shirt was soaked through with sweat. I don't remember getting to the next truck stop. Just remember pulling in and sitting there while the sky started to lighten. I never reported it. What would I even say? I've driven that stretch a dozen times since. Nothing unusual, no woman, no voice. Just flat Texas road and long hours. But I still think about her. Those eyes. Or the lack of them. I don't know who she was. Don't know what she was. But I believe the warning was real. Whatever was waiting for me past that curve, it wasn't just a wreck. This is for anyone still listening on the back roads. If you see her, don't ask questions. Don't try to help. Just stop and turn around. I thought it was just fog until the lights started moving. This happened near Klingman's Dome up in the Smoky Mountains, a stretch of road that looks beautiful in the daylight and like a different world after dark. I was heading through the mountains with a load of farm equipment, trying to beat a storm front that was supposed to roll in by morning. I've driven through every kind of weather, snow, dust, black ice. Nothing ever made me nervous like fog. But that night, it wasn't the fog that bothered me. It was what came out of it. I'd passed through that area plenty of times before, eastbound, westbound, in rain and snow. But that night the fog was thicker than I'd ever seen. It didn't move like regular mist. It just sat there, heavy, white, unmoving, like it was waiting. The headlights barely touched it. It was like shining a flashlight into milk. Everything outside the windshield felt muted, like I was underwater. No trees, no stars, no signs, just the hum of the engine and the soft clunk of the trailer shifting behind me. The load was solid, farm machinery. Nothing strange. I kept the CB off. Too much static in the mountains. Just me and the road and a dark so dense it felt physical, the kind that makes you second-guess every curve, every bump. And still, I wasn't nervous. Not yet. That came later, when I saw the lights. At first I thought it was another truck coming around the bend. Headlights, maybe a mile ahead. But the angle was wrong. They weren't sitting on the road. They were hovering. They floated about 30 feet off the ground. Maybe more. 3 of them, soft, circular, glowing in a slow pulse. Not steady like vehicle lights. These faded in and out, shifting from yellow to pale blue, then to a kind of dull red. No sound, no motion from the fog around them. Just those lights, hanging there like eyes half closed. I slowed the rig down to a crawl, tried to make sense of what I was seeing. Could have been drones, I told myself. Survey equipment, maybe. But something about them didn't add up. The way they hovered, not drifting or reacting to wind, just fixed in the air, like they were watching. Then they started to move, not toward me, not exactly, but lower. Drifting downward in slow, perfect synchronization. I was maybe 50 yards away when they dipped below the tree line and vanished. No impact, no shadows, no trace. Just gone. I sat there for a long minute, engine running, lights on, everything suddenly too quiet. Then the CB, which I'd left off, crackled back to life. The speaker popped, sharp, loud, then static poured out like someone had torn open the air. I reached for the dial, thinking maybe another driver had flipped channels. But before I could touch it, the voice came through, low, distorted, like it had been recorded wrong. "Get out of here!" 3 words, drawn out, almost mechanical. Then a sound like metal grinding on itself, high-pitched, scraping, too loud for the speaker. I flinched back, instinct kicking in. The CB went dead. No static, no buzz, just silence. That's when I felt it. This pressure in my chest. Not pain, not fear exactly, just something wrong pressing down on me from the inside out. Like the air was too thick and I wasn't supposed to be there. Like I had stepped into something that didn't belong to me. I threw the truck into gear and started rolling again. Didn't care about the incline, didn't care about the load weight. I just drove, hard. Whatever those lights were, whatever that voice was, it didn't want me there. I didn't stop until I hit the base of the mountain, nearly an hour later. Pulled off at a diner that looked like it hadn't changed since the 70s. Parked crooked. Walked inside like I was sleepwalking. There were a few other truckers in there. I didn't say much at first. Just ordered coffee and sat staring out the window even though it was still dark. One of the older guys eventually asked where I'd come from. I told him just enough. He nodded slow, didn't laugh, didn't act surprised. Just said, "Those lights have been up there for years. My granddad saw 'em. My brother did too." Another driver chimed in. Same thing. No one agreed on what they were. Spirits, government, something else. But they all said the same thing in the end. Don't stop. Don't look. Since then, I don't drive that route at night. I don't play with the fog. And if I ever hear that voice again, I won't wait around to listen. This is for anyone climbing through the dark on mountain roads. If the lights find you, keep moving. Some roads remember you. Some don't let go. This happened along a stretch of US 191 in New Mexico, cutting through a part of Gila National Forest. Nothing but black pine, broken pavement, and too much quiet. I was running a solo haul, sacks of grain for a feed co-op just over the state line. It was the kind of job you don't think twice about, in and out. But the night I crossed that road alone, something crossed back. I've been driving long enough to know what loneliness feels like. You get used to the silence, the radio static, the way the trees seem to lean closer after midnight. But this wasn't that. This was different. This was watched. And whatever was out there, it wasn't waiting for a ride. I left late, almost sundown, but figured I'd reach the halfway point by midnight. I'd done the route before. Long, dry, nothing but scrubland and tall trees pushing in from both sides. No real shoulders, just gravel and dust. I remember the way the sun disappeared, not behind clouds, just gone. Like someone dimmed the whole state. My headlights clicked on automatically, but barely cut through the dark. I kept one hand on the wheel and the other wrapped around a gas station coffee that had gone cold before I hit mile 20. No music, just the low hum of tires and the occasional bump from the trailer shifting behind me. I passed a rusted sign for the forest boundary, and that was the last marker I remember. After that, just road. 10 miles from the next stop, I noticed something on the shoulder, a figure walking toward me. At first, I thought it was a hiker, but then I saw what he was wearing. All white, torn, dirty, like a hospital gown that had been dragged through a field, and he wasn't walking right. His steps were uneven, like his legs didn't belong to him. He drifted more than walked, shoulders slumped, head tilted down. As I got closer, I eased off the gas. Something about him felt wrong. Not injured, not drunk, just wrong. He stepped into the road, right into my lane. No hesitation. I hit the brakes hard, swerved slightly, tires skimming the gravel. He didn't flinch, just stopped in the middle of the blacktop and turned to face me. The truck idled about 20 feet away, headlights full on him. His clothes were ripped open at the chest. His skin was pale and streaked with something dark. Mud, maybe blood. His face stayed in shadow, but I saw the eyes, or rather, the lack of them. They didn't reflect. No whites, no glare, just empty black hollows that seemed to stretch in like staring into a dry well. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, just sat there with both hands locked on the wheel, like the cab was the only thing keeping me alive. Then he smiled. I slammed the accelerator and swerved wide around him. Tires screamed against the edge of the pavement. For a second, I thought the trailer might tip, but I didn't care. I didn't look back, just kept my eyes locked on the road and forced myself to keep going. Even after I cleared the bend, I couldn't shake the feeling like he was still back there, watching the taillights disappear. I made it to the station 10 minutes later. This run-down gas stop with a single pump and a flickering sign. Pulled in crooked and stepped out like I'd just crawled out of a nightmare. The attendant didn't ask much, just looked at me, real quiet, and said, "You saw him, didn't you?" I didn't answer right away. He nodded like he didn't need me to. "He only shows up on moonless nights," the guy said. "Always near the forest line. Always alone." I asked if anyone ever figured out who, or what, he was. "No one really wants to know," he said, "but people say he's still looking for whatever he lost out there." I stayed at that station until sunrise. Didn't try to sleep. Just sat in the cab with the engine off and the windows cracked, listening to the trees creak in the wind. Something about that stretch never felt the same after. I've driven it since, once or twice, in daylight, and nothing ever happened. But every time I pass that boundary sign, I feel it. That pressure in the chest. Like the road knows me now. Like it's waiting. I never saw the man again. But I've heard stories. Drivers on night hauls alone, claiming they passed someone walking. Always alone, always just standing there as the truck goes by. I don't talk about it much. Most people think you're just tired, hallucinating, but I know what I saw, and if you ever find yourself out on 191 after midnight, and you see someone in white, standing where the woods meet the blacktop, don't stop, whatever he's looking for. Let him keep looking. The voice on the CB said, "There's something on the bridge." Then it went dead. This happened on a delivery run from Alabama to northern Louisiana. Me and another driver I'd known for years. We weren't part of the same company, but sometimes you buddy up when the route gets long and the deadlines are tight. The bridge was just past midnight. Old, narrow, steel-framed, one of those leftover pieces of infrastructure no one talks about. Just prays it doesn't collapse. But that wasn't the problem. The problem was what we saw before we crossed, and what he swears he saw in the middle of the road. I didn't believe in any of this before that night. Thought ghost stories were just filler for empty airwaves. Now? I don't even use that frequency anymore. We left just after dawn from a freight yard outside Montgomery, 2 semis loaded with construction gear, bound for a site near Shreveport. It was a tight schedule, so we ran through most of the night. I had my partner, Ray, a few miles ahead, checking in every so often over the CB. We kept each other awake with jokes, traffic updates, bad music. Same routine as always. By the second night, we were cutting through the back end of Mississippi, the kind of back roads that don't even show up clean on GPS. No shoulder, no lights, just swamp on one side and forest on the other. I remember the air getting thick, wet and warm, like you're breathing through cotton. Around midnight, the road narrowed again, and the trees folded in tighter. That's when we hit the bridge. Steel girders, rusted bolts, water somewhere far below. I checked my mirrors, keyed the CB to let Ray know I was crossing, but there was nothing. No voice, no static, just silence. I tried again. "Ray, you copy? I'm about to cross. You seeing this fog up ahead?" Nothing. Then just as I let go of the mic, a burst of static, sharp as glass, and underneath it, a voice, cracked, low, almost buried in the noise. "Don't cross. They're still there." I froze. Looked down at the radio, then out the windshield. The bridge was empty, just a pale shimmer of headlights bouncing off metal and mist. I hit the brakes, rolled to a stop just before the entrance. Seconds later, Ray's lights appeared on the other side. He'd already crossed. I called again. He didn't answer, but I saw his rig jerk slightly. Stop halfway down the next slope. By the time I caught up, he was standing outside his cab, pale and shaking. There were people, he said, in the middle of the bridge, just standing there. I looked back. Nothing but fog and rusted steel. He kept staring like he couldn't let it go. They were watching me, he said, like they were waiting for something. We stood there in the dark, rigs idling, fog creeping across the pavement. I walked ahead a few yards just to prove to myself it was all in Ray's head. That's when I saw them. Thin, wooden crosses. Dozens of them nailed into the ground at the far edge of the bridge. Some had names, some didn't. Most were worn down by time, tilted, half-rotted into the soil. But they were there, about 20 feet from where Ray had stopped. He came up beside me, silent now. We didn't say much after that. Got back in the trucks and rolled out slow, without music, without chatter. I didn't turn the CB on again that night. Later, after the job was done, I did some digging. The bridge didn't have a name, just a number in the county system. But I found an old news clip. 20 years back, a church bus had lost control in heavy rain, went off the side, 19 dead. Ray didn't want to hear it. Said he'd already seen more than he wanted. He still won't drive that route. Neither will I. We never talked about it again. Not really. Every once in a while, if I pass that stretch during the day, which I try not to, I slow down near the bridge. I look for the crosses. Some are gone now, overgrown or taken by the river, but a few are still there, hanging on. I keep the CB off when I'm near it, just in case. Ray switched routes not long after. I heard he started taking shorter hauls. Said it was time to slow down. I don't blame him. I still wonder about the voice. The one that came through the static. I didn't recognize it. Didn't sound like Ray. Didn't sound like anyone I know. But it warned me. Kept me from crossing too soon. Some part of me thinks, maybe not everyone who died that night stayed down there. Maybe something, or someone, still walks that bridge. And maybe, sometimes, they talk. If you hear them, don't answer. Just keep driving. The cargo was gone. No sign of a break-in, no busted lock, no drag marks. Just an empty trailer and a delivery that never existed. This happened on a solo run between Oklahoma City and Amarillo. Middle of the week, middle of the night. I'd picked up a load of used furniture from a yard off the highway, paid in cash, handed a bill of lading that looked just official enough. Something about it felt off, sure. But when you've been driving long enough, you stop asking questions that don't pay you. I was supposed to drop it at a private address. Guy said it was a storage unit out west. Seemed simple. But halfway through that run, something started following me. And by the end of it, I wasn't even sure I'd picked anything up at all. I gotten the call from a guy who claimed he ran estate cleanouts. Said he had a trailer full of leftover furniture headed west, didn't want to deal with big carriers. Offered cash, no questions, just a quiet drop. Pickup was at a dirt lot behind a closed antique store. No signage, no lights. The furniture was already loaded, covered in tarps, strapped down. Didn't seem shady, just sloppy. I got the paperwork, signed my name, and took off around 1 a.m. The trailer felt heavy but balanced. No shifting, no noise. I figured I'd drive straight through, maybe stop once for gas. It was a clear night, no traffic, nothing on the CB but the usual highway ghosts, preachers, weather, some guy in Ohio complaining about brake lines. Everything felt normal, boring even. But somewhere around the Texas line, I started hearing things. Small, dull thuds from the trailer. Not sharp, not violent, just enough to get my attention. Like something inside was moving. I pulled off at a rest area just past Shamrock, killed the engine, grabbed a flashlight, and walked around to the back. Everything looked fine, seal intact, doors undisturbed, but I still had that gnawing feeling like something was off balance. I unlocked the latch, swung the doors open, and stopped cold. The load was a mess. Furniture that had been tied down was scattered. Chairs on their sides, a dresser cracked against the wall. Couch cushions flipped like someone had gone through it in a hurry. It didn't make sense. The trailer had ridden smooth the whole way. I climbed inside, checking for damage, or maybe an animal. Nothing. No claw marks, no footprints, no signs of forced entry. Just one thing I couldn't explain. The smell, like old wood soaked in river water. Damp, faintly sweet. Not rot, not mold, but unnatural. I climbed out, shut the doors, and told myself maybe I hit a bump harder than I thought. But deep down, I didn't believe that. I got back on the road, driving faster now, trying to put miles between me and whatever that had been. The smell lingered, even with the vents open. Something about it clung to the lining of the cab, like it had crept in through the seams. Then the CB came to life. I hadn't touched the dial. No one had keyed in. It just clicked on by itself, and a voice came through. You took what wasn't yours. Low, flat. Like it had been spoken through grit. I hit the brakes and pulled onto the shoulder without thinking. Looked back at the trailer. Still sealed, still locked. But I didn't go check it, not this time. Instead, I drove. Hard, no stops, no music. Just the sound of my tires and that awful feeling in my gut, like I'd picked up something I wasn't supposed to carry. By the time I made it to Amarillo, the sun was up and I was shaking. Pulled into the drop location, a chain-link lot behind a shuttered warehouse. But when I opened the trailer, it was empty. No furniture, no straps, not even dust where the pieces had been, just bare aluminum walls and the faint trace of that same damp smell. I called the number from the paperwork. Disconnected. I checked the address on the bill. Didn't match any registered business. I called dispatch just to cover my bases. And that's when I felt the floor drop out. There was no record of the job. Nothing in the system. No pickup scheduled. No delivery logged. They hadn't assigned me a load that day. I sat there for almost an hour, staring at that empty trailer, trying to remember details, faces, names. I couldn't. Just vague shapes, a parking lot, a man with a clipboard, a voice over the phone that didn't have an accent or a tone. Since that night, I've kept a paper log of every run, photos, names, copies, just in case. Because something rode with me that night. And sometimes, when I'm driving past Amarillo after dark. Thanks for tuning in to 7:31 a.m. tonight. If you're new here, like and subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next signal.